joining us from the great state of Texas. I want to make sure he's there. Dalyxman, can you hear me?
What's going on, Blog Talk Radio? What's going on, Offtheroppeshow? It is definitely your boy, Dalyxman. What's going on, man?
I'm feeling good. Welcome. Now, the first question I've got for you, Dalyxman, is how honored are you that this is the first podcast venture for Offtheroppeshow OTRS Central in 3 years now, and you were selected to be the first ever guest? Not a wrestler, not anybody else on YouTube. It was you, Dalyxman.
I have to say, I am pretty honored that the Schlegdaddy decided to bring your boy on his Blog Talk Radio. You could have had anybody else, but you got this boy right here. I don't know. I feel very humbled. I don't know what I should do.
Bow down to my awesomeness. No. I appreciate you coming on. We've got a lot to talk about here and a decent amount of time to do that. Now, I suppose we could start off with Hijack Raw. Now, obviously, this past Monday, Raw was in Rosemont, Illinois, the Chicagoland area, needless to say at the old Rosemont Horizon, the Allstate Arena. And I just want to kind of get your thoughts on whether or not you feel that hashtag Hijack Raw was a good idea. Do you feel it was successful? Do you feel it was a failure? What was kind of your whole thoughts going into it? And then with what ultimately ended up happening, what's your whole thought process on this? What's your opinion on this?
Well, man, here's how I see things. Ultimately, what I wanted out of, Hijack Raw in Chicago was a great show. That's all I wanted. I wanted great matches. I wanted great segments. I wanted an intense, excited, just hyper crowd to make the show great. Because ultimately, and you'll probably agree with me on this one, the best cast member of any wrestling show is the audience. Do you agree?
It depends on who you ask. If you ask Vince McMahon, he would say whoever he tells you is the best. But no, ultimately, I would agree. I would agree with this, is that if you have a lively crowd, that always enhances the viewing experience, both for those that are actually there live and in person, and for the people watching at home. There's no question about that. Nobody wants to sit there and be around a show where you see a half-empty audience or half-empty arena, or the fans that are there, whether there's a portion of the audience or it's sold out, them being completely quiet. It's just a drag for everybody there and for everybody watching at home. I completely agree. So are you saying that you feel that Hijack Raw was a success then, or I'm kind of trying to pick your brain on this?
Right, and then the segue to answer your question, to me, I didn't really go into Hijack Raw thinking about, I want the crowd to hijack the show and, take it to WWE for not putting Daniel Bryan in the main event. Screw them, fuck this, McMahon. No, it's nothing like that at all. It's pretty much, I just wanted a great show. And ultimately, I feel like I got what I wanted. I felt like Raw delivered in terms of, the first segment, they kicked off the show with a great promo by Paul Heyman, who I thought, I don't know how to explain it, but I think Paul Heyman hijacked Raw. He turned it on the fans. He took advantage of the fans going in because he knew that they were going to be hyped up for CM Punk. And he knew they were going to be chanting it throughout the night. So immediately WWE said, we got to send Paul Heyman out there. Paul Heyman fed off the audience. He pretty much got his own pipe bomb, and then he took the heat from the CM Punk chants and he turned it into storyline for, Brock Lesnar and Undertaker. And to me, I thought that was, well played by WWE. And in a sense, I'm not upset about that at all, because what happened is it made the WWE step up their game, and it made them deliver a great show. So in terms of, the WWE step up the game, they give us a great show as a result of, in preparation of the Hijack audience. Yeah, I felt like overall the show was great to me, so I thought it was a success.
Now, here's my question to you to kind of follow up on that. Was that really what Hijack Raw was ultimately about? Now, that might have been what it was for you and what it would have represented to you. But to me, it seemed like it was this attempt at a grassroots movement to really try to create some anarchy and really try to force some dramatic, that's a new word, by the way, Dalyxman, some dramatic, drastic changes in the WWE that just aren't coming. And to me, I guess here's my thing is, does it really make sense, knowing that WWE knows they are going into Punk territory? Is it one of these things where it was coincidental that people were doing hashtag Hijack Raw and they thought they were going to hijack it in the crowd? Didn't the WWE already know going in that the pressure was going to be on? They knew what the situation was going to be even before all this garbage started on social media and what have you. Didn't they already know that they were kind of going into the lion's den and the pressure was on to produce a great show regardless? And if anything else, wasn't it kind of foolish for fans to sit there a week ahead of time and basically tell the WWE what they were intending to do and what they were planning on doing, whereas the fans had no idea whatsoever what the WWE was going to actually do?
Well, you know what? Somewhat I do agree with you on that one, because the Hijack Raw, the hashtag Hijack Raw has been going on, and was been going on for like a couple of weeks now. So, yeah, eventually the WWE was going to get wind of that. And I guess in a sense, if I'm going to be completely honest, I think the people that started the hashtag Raw had the intentions of actually literally hijacking the show and literally, taking over and just doing things that the WWE didn't want, ripping apart Batista and everybody else in the show. Just filling the show with frustration and rage for, running off CM Punk and not putting Daniel Bryan in the World Championship picture. So, yeah, I do believe that initially the idea was to literally go ECW in Chicago, and I don't know how far they would have taken it. I don't expect any Kane Dewey signs or throwing chairs inside the ring. At the same time, though, I think the idea was to, yes, I do agree, really, send a message to WWE that we're not happy with your product. Now, in terms of that coming across on Raw, I have to say it didn't do a very good job. It almost felt like the Chicago crowd gave up, like immediately after the Paul Heyman segment. Maybe they were worn out because of the CM Punk Chants. Or maybe they just felt like, you know what, this isn't a good idea. Maybe this wasn't the best place to do this. So in that sense, if indeed that was the initial goal of it, I will say it was a failure. But, it's hard to really pick at what these fans are thinking nowadays.
Well, I'll put it to you this way. We're talking about somebody here and me, the Schlegdaddy, that has had no problems in the past, and everybody should understand this or should know this. I've had no problems in the past calling out the WWE on what I perceive to be their BS. When it comes to the WWE or the wrestling product as a whole, I don't care if it's fans, I don't care if it's promoters, I don't care if it's wrestlers, people in the business. If something smells like BS to me, I'm going to call them out on it, and I'm going to talk about it. And I'm going to point out why I feel it's BS, and a lot of times present an option of why I think it was better. But I guess here, to kind of follow up then again on this, because I think this is very important, and I think you kind of know where I stand on this. When it comes to like a hashtag Hijack Raw, this almost seemed like a pathetic attempt to mimic the crowd of Miami after WrestleMania 28, the crowd in New Jersey after WrestleMania 29. Does it kind of seem like this is only nothing more than maybe a copycat thing where they were trying to do it but do it better? Because people have been hijacking, and you can correct me if I'm right or wrong here, they have been hijacking John Cena segments and matches for 9 damn years. The Breakfast Club has reigned supreme in the WWE for years. So if people thought all of a sudden they were going to go to Chicago Raw there in Rosemont at the Allstate Arena and they were going to chant for CM Punk and interrupt all these matches and all this other stuff, what made them think that the WWE would truly care, knowing that you've already paid your money to get into the venue to begin with? You've probably bought merch, you've bought concessions, a lot of those people probably have already paid to actually subscribe to the WWE Network. Isn't this a perfect example of how fans don't understand how to really hurt and make an impact on the WWE? They get caught up in thinking like fans too much and thinking with their hearts and not with their brains. And that one video I did where I talked about you got to hit Vince in the ass pocket, hashtag ass pocket, because that's the only way you're going to ultimately affect any real change in the WWE is to hit him where it hurts in the wallet. I mean, so why would fans, and I want to hear your perspective on this because maybe you have some people that have given you insight. Why do fans think that something like a hashtag Hijack Raw even works or even makes any sense or isn't a good idea to do? When you've already given them your money, you're going to the venue. Does it really matter at that point to the WWE whether you cheer or boo or however the heck you react?
Well, see, some fans, and, this is just from, like I said, from what I've observed from wrestling fans and why they do this and stuff like that. Some fans do it just to, even though they know their voice doesn't really affect anything, they do it because they want to feel like they're contributing. They do it because, you know what, although I know for certain that I am a, lack of a better term, the vocal minority, which is a term I hate, but it's you know, there's the truth behind it. You know, although I am a vocal minority, I still want to feel like that my voice matters. And so what we'll do is I'll you know, scream at the top of my lungs. I'll get on YouTube, I'll get on Twitter, and I'll start something, and hopefully it'll catch on. Another reason that I feel like they do stuff like this is because they look at the past. They look at what it was like in the Attitude Era, what it was like in, you know, certain eras like ECW. ECW is probably the best example, where literally the crowd controlled the show. And I think fans believe that, hey, maybe we can create an ECW type of, you know, venue with Raw if we get enough people to do it. The problem is, when it comes to ECW, it was great, but it was small, and not small in the sense of, you know, it was like below WWE. But, you know, it had such a small audience to draw from that, you know, they were able to make that impact. They were catering to that audience. As you notice, when ECW grew bigger, they kind of stopped doing that. And, you know, at the business level that the WWE is right now, the conglomerate that it is, that's gone worldwide, it's really hard to really create that ECW-like venue with Raw where the crowd controls the show. Like I said, I do believe the best cast member of the show is the crowd. However, you know, for the fans to feel like, oh, if I do this, if I do that, I can make this McMahon do whatever. Now, Vince McMahon may listen to the audience eventually and give them what they want because he's a smart man like that. But he also has to let them know that, listen, guys, I've been doing this for how many years? I've been doing this for decades. I appreciate your passion, but you guys don't quite understand what's going on here. And eventually, I think, you know, #Raw was an indication of that. Hey, we'll make you feel like that you're taking over, but you're really not in charge. So that's my whole thoughts on that.
Well, here's the thing to keep in mind when we're talking about ECW, and I'm glad you brought it up because I think a lot of fans have this misperception that a bunch of hardcore fans started hijacking WWF shows in the mid-'90s, and that's what forced the change. And that is a ridiculous notion, and I'll tell you why. Because that stuff was starting back at King of the Ring 95 when Mabel won King of the Ring and people were chanting ECW, ECW, and all this stuff. Now, keep in mind, by the time he got to like 96, 97, Vince was actually partially bankrolling Paul Heyman in ECW, which is something that a lot of times seems to be left out of the equation. So, but you look at, and you know this too, Dalyxman, because you've gone back and watched WWF in 95 and 96, and even, you know, as you got ready to go into 97, not much really changed. Vince McMahon was still doing things the way Vince McMahon felt was best. What forced that change? Sure, a portion of the audience stopped watching WWF and started watching ECW. A much more sizable portion of his old audience flipped over to TNT and TBS and started watching WCW. Once fans stopped going to the shows, once he started losing in the ratings, and once he got to the point where he was losing money in a bad, big way, that is what caused the change, not people chanting for ECW or this or that or et cetera, et cetera. Now, I do want to ask you this. Now, you're somebody that, you know, a lot of times as a fan, you think with your heart. Now, and again, I don't want to begrudge anybody, whether it's you or anybody else, for having a love or a passion for professional wrestling, because God knows I do too. But I have to imagine that it frustrates you, if not flat out pisses you off, when somebody like a Dolph Ziggler is wrestling, or a Daniel Bryan is talking or having a match, or a Bray Wyatt is cutting a promo, or a Roman Reigns and The Shield are appearing, and people are chanting for CM Punk. Does that make any sense in the world whatsoever? Now, here is a guy, and I'm going to operate based off of my own assumptions. That can be my own, and that's fine. But I fully believe that CM Punk left of his own fruition. He did what he did, and that's it. Why would people continue to chant for a guy that is not there instead of throwing additional support to the guys that are there, that are still busting their asses for them, these guys that these fans are supposed to like and supposed to love? I mean, you love Dolph Ziggler. You love Daniel Bryan. You love CM Punk. If you were there live in attendance, would you really sit there, Dalyxman, and be sitting there chanting for CM Punk during a Daniel Bryan segment or a Daniel Bryan match?
Well, honestly, to answer that question, no. If Daniel Bryan is on my TV, my full attention is devoted to Daniel Bryan. Also, if Dolph Ziggler was on my TV, same thing. If the Usos are on my TV, same thing. If Bray Wyatt was on my TV, same thing. To me, and, this is coming straight from conversations with wrestling fans and interacting with them, I think the CM Punk chants have different reasons behind just, we want CM Punk back. Screw the show. Screw the WWE for getting rid of him. I think number one reason why fans chant CM Punk, fans are chanting CM Punk to vent frustration and to send a message to WWE. It's almost like, I don't want to say the wet chant, because actually, let's talk about that, because CM Punk leaving is very similar to Stone Cold Steve Austin leaving in 2000. The big difference is back then when Austin left, the crowd didn't chant, we want Austin, or Stone Cold, or, whatever they chant for Austin, the hell yeah, or what. But see, back then in 2002, you had stars like Kurt Angle, you had The Rock, you had people like Triple H, you had people like, a Chris Benoit, or Shawn Michaels, or Chris Jericho. You had people to carry the load when Austin left, which made the audience, in a sense, not forget about Austin, but they felt like, hey, he's gone, but we don't necessarily need Austin to be on TV.
He wasn't even the top guy at that point. The Rock had surpassed him, and then, like you said, you had the Hogans and the et ceteras of the world. Flair was there. You still had Taker wrestling on a full-time basis. You had the talent roster where you could drop an Austin, and it didn't really matter at the end of the day. Sure, they would take a hit in terms of merch, and some Austin fans might be pissed off, but were they going to stop watching just because an Austin wasn't there when all these other great talents were there? I get that. But we get to this whole CM Punk thing, and this is what I wanted to touch on really quickly before we move on to Daniel Bryan. I know you're a big CM Punk fan. What are your thoughts on him not being on WWE television now for, we're getting to a month and a half plus? Do you still believe this is a work? Do you believe this is a shoot? Do you hold any grudges against CM Punk? Are you angry with CM Punk at all? Are you angry with fans that are chanting for him? Like you said, I get the whole thing of choosing to rebel, but in segments like with Dolph Ziggler and Daniel Bryan and Bray Wyatt and The Shield and these people that the hardcore wrestling fans claim to love and are supposed to love, they're chanting for a guy ultimately that isn't there, instead of throwing even more support to the guys that are. Does that frustrate you? Do you understand it? Do you agree with it?
I do, just to answer your question first off about the frustration part, I do think the fans do get a little out of hand with the CM Punk chants, because like I said, when Daniel Bryan's on TV, there's really no need to chant for CM Punk, because even when CM Punk was there, the fans cared about Daniel Bryan getting in the main event, and I felt like the CM Punk chants were out of place for that point in time. Now, if you want to chant it for like the Diva segment or like Fandango versus Santino Morello, the Great Khali versus Damian Sandow, okay, it makes sense. But for the great talent, like you just said, that were out there busting their ass and giving us good TV, because ultimately that's what we want, good TV. Daniel Bryan, Usos, Wyatts, etc. The CM Punk chants do feel out of place. Now, in terms of CM Punk leaving and all that kind of stuff, I don't know Phillip Brooks, but based off of reports, if he was definitely frustrated with his character, with the direction that he was going in, if he had nagging injuries, if he, was tired of being on the road, sick of being around the people he was working with, all that stuff builds up over time. And I could, be the professional one and say, you know what, he probably should have waited until his contract expired in July and then left.
Right.
But then I think about, the timing of his leave, because he left, the Monday Night Raw after the Royal Rumble, he left, which has to tell you that had to be intentional, because this is WrestleMania season. This is in the middle of WrestleMania season. This is the big paycheck, the most TV time, the best storyline. This is the place to be. This is where every wrestler is wrestling their career to be at, WrestleMania. For CM Punk to leave before WrestleMania, he really had to it had to be intentional.
Why would it be a work for him to leave before the biggest show of the year that would produce the biggest payout of the year?
Because CM Punk he knew that the audience would turn on WWE. He knew the audience would give him flack for it. And in his mind, he knew that WWE would fight for him to come back. And you know what? I don't want to say politicking, but in a sense, I think CM Punk is doing this on purpose because he knows the WWE needs him. And eventually, I think CM Punk will come back. And, yes, I do believe he's not going to stay away for long. He'll probably come back after WrestleMania sometime. In terms of him staying for, like, a long term, that's to be decided. But in terms of CM Punk leaving before WrestleMania, I think he did that to send a message to WWE in terms of, guys, I don't need this. I can leave anytime I want. I've done everything I can possibly do. I've already wrestled at WrestleMania. I've already been world champion. I'm the longest reigning world champion in the last few decades. I won every title that needs to win. I've beaten the top. I've beaten the best. I fought the best. There's nothing else I need to do but main event WrestleMania. And I think CM Punk did that to show WWE that if you're not going to treat my character with the right respect, if you're not going to, showcase me as the top guy that I believe I am, and I know that I am, then I don't need to be here. Now, professionally, I will admit that that's probably not the best thing to do, but you know what? Some people may look at that and go, you know what? I respect that. A guy that busted his ass for everything he's done, who is great at his job, should get a high regard, respect in that. Now, again, I do think he should have stayed and finished up his contract before leaving, but that's to be determined, and if he does come back, we'll see where that goes. But in terms of CM Punk leaving, go ahead.
I will say one thing to kind of defend CM Punk is that somebody could fire him without giving, and this kind of translates to the business world too, where if you're an employee, you're expected to be professional on the way out, not burn bridges, give a proper 2-week notice or whatever the agreed upon notice is, what have you. But an employer in most states can just fire you at will, with or without reason, for whenever and wherever and however they want to. So I get that CM Punk has been in a position where he's afforded himself the luxury to, if he doesn't want to do it anymore, he can pick up his ball and go home. What I don't like is when people sit there and say that he was treated terribly. Now look, was he given the spot of somebody like a John Cena? No, of course not. And he shouldn't have been naive enough to ever think that that would happen, as tragic as it might seem. But this is a guy that feuded in the past couple of years with people like Undertaker, people like Chris Jericho, people like Brock Lesnar, people like Triple H. And we could sit there and talk about this, people like John Cena, people like Daniel Bryan, people like Randy Orton. We could sit there and talk about the fact of, well, he wasn't treated all that well. Well, he sure got to feud with a lot of the top guys. I mean, that is something that can't be denied. He got a chance to feud with a lot of the top guys. You just said yourself, how many days? 434 days as WWE champion? Was that the number of days, 434?
Yes, that's it, sir.
Yeah, I mean, so, yeah, I like that. You called me sir. No, I'm kidding.
that just slipped off. That's a Texan thing. I'm sorry, man.
But while they didn't always treat him the best during that title reign, which is something I talked about a lot, I find it kind of hypocritical of Punk to supposedly be pissed off about not main eventing a WrestleMania when during his 434-day title reign, he had no problem sitting there pumping out the propaganda and the BS talking about, well, it doesn't matter if you go on last or not. It matters which match is most memorable and which match steals the show. BS. The bottom line is, in the WWE, the main event of a pay-per-view has always been the last match of the pay-per-view. The match that pays out the best is the last match of the pay-per-view. The bottom line is CM Punk, Phillip Brooks, in my opinion, got pissed off because he felt like he deserved a main event at WrestleMania. And I don't disagree with him. But if I'm a Vince McMahon, if this guy could potentially leave as of July, why would I give him a WrestleMania main event? Why would I do that? I've treated this guy well. After WrestleMania 29, I gave him some time off because he was worn down and his body was hurting. I've done a lot for him. I've pushed his merch to the point where he is easily the number 2 merch seller in the WWE. They treated this guy very well. Not perfectly, not John Cena well, not Randy Orton well, not Dave Bautista well, but for the fans to me to sit there and say that CM Punk got treated terribly, I just think that's a big load of BS. He didn't get treated as well as some others, but he still got treated well. Who do you think got treated worse, a CM Punk or a Dolph Ziggler? Dolph's never even gotten nearly the opportunities of a CM Punk. If anybody should be upset about anybody's treatment, it should be fans of Dolph Ziggler for Dolph Ziggler. Anytime he ever gets close to that mountaintop or he gets a chance to maybe break through that glass ceiling, bam, it comes crashing down and they bury his ass, and it's ridiculous. So for the fans that sit there and say, CM Punk was treated poorly and I can't blame him, I understand to a degree. But let's be realistic here. He was treated a hell of a lot better than 99% of that roster. Ask what it's like for a Zack Ryder or a Dolph Ziggler or a Damian Sandow or a Kofi Kingston to get the WWE burial treatment. I mean, those have been guys that have been buried over a period of time. CM Punk never has. Now, speaking of that, let's move on to your favorite topic of all, and that is Daniel Bryan.
Yeah.
Now,
yes. Yes. Yes.
Now, I know that he is easily your favorite wrestler in the professional wrestling business today. But the bigger question for me is, why do you love Daniel Bryan so much? Why is he your favorite? Why is he the guy that gets you to stand up and do videos about him? And what is it that's got you on board with the Yes Movement more than anything else?
If anything, I have to say, living vicariously through Daniel Bryan, the thing that draws me towards him the most out of any other character that I've seen over the last decade or so is the fact that not only is he great at what he does or has a passion for the business and all that kind of jazz, it's the fact that you look at these, big muscle men, you look at these giants and these Goliaths in the world of WWE, and you look at Daniel Bryan, and you see this guy in there, and yeah, he is small. You see this man in there who is, he has the ferocity of a giant, but he's small. But he also has the fight and the heart and the passion to continue going even when he's down. It's the idea that Daniel Bryan, when you knock him down, he keeps getting back up and he keeps working towards it. A man like that, and in any sport, you can go to boxing, you can go to, basketball, and anything, in any sort of venue. When you have a character like that, you can't tell me that he's not somebody to get behind. He's been like that when he was Bryan Danielson and ROH. He's been like that, in the other wrestling companies he's been in, all over the world. NJPW, New Japan Pro Wrestling. You want to go to PWG. It's the character that grabs me, and that is why Daniel Bryan is my favorite wrestler right now. And people might say, well, John Cena's like that. Not really. I don't believe John Cena. It's a lot harder to get behind someone like John Cena. Look at him. He's muscle bound. He's rich. He's the most popular guy in the world. It's easy to like a John Cena. It's really easy. Of course you like him. He's a rich, muscle-bound motherfucker who picks up people. He can pick up everybody, anybody. He's strong as shit. He's Superman. It's easy to like Superman. But when you see someone like a Daniel Bryan, who, in all honesty, shouldn't even be in the WWE, shouldn't even be swimming with the sharks that he's swimming with right now, but to see him get to where he is right now and not only swim but thrive and continue to grow in that area, it's inspiring, man. And that's why, ultimately, I'm a fan of Daniel Bryan.
So you're kind of saying there, which I think is kind of interesting, you touched on it, is that his biggest strength for you is also his biggest weakness in terms of his positioning in the company to a degree, and that is his size and his style and his look and all of that. Correct me if I'm wrong here. His biggest strength that allows him to connect with him as a fan and for him to connect with the audience is also, ironically enough, perhaps that biggest weight that drags him down, the biggest anchor, that biggest liability. How do you think a Daniel Bryan can overcome that biggest obstacle? Let's face it. Certain people are born with height and a great frame and a great physique, and some people aren't. Daniel Bryan is never going to be a giant. He could sit there and put the stretching machine on and try and make himself 6'4", but ladies and gentlemen, it's not going to happen. How do you think he and the WWE can overcome that big obstacle and continue to overcome that big obstacle to make him a legit 100%, no matter what they do with him, top guy in the WWE?
Well, and I think you said this before, too, in one of your reviews, probably all your reviews. The biggest drawing factor for Daniel Bryan as of right now is the fact that he struggles a lot. He's the underdog. He's the guy that, okay, you look at him, you compare him to John Cena. Who do you expect to win? Cena. But he beat Cena. That is, to me, the biggest drawing factor of Daniel Bryan, and I think that is going to be a big contributor to him being a top star, a big player in WWE in the near future. Now, along with that, has to come the idea that, and this is something I hope he gets, that in the near future, that when it comes down to it, when you piss, because this will show in ROH too, Daniel Bryan has a vicious side to him that has yet. It's been shown glimmers in WWE here and there, but it hasn't been exposed to the point that this is a part of his character. There's a different side to Daniel Bryan, a vicious, maniacal side, that if he gets pissed off, if you push him too far and you let him, get to his dark side of himself, he can beat anybody. He can break legs. He can break arms. He can, put you in any type of submission hold and make you cry like a bitch. Seriously, he can take the biggest giants and have them screaming to their mamas in a few seconds. And that's just something the WWE hasn't created yet. And I think once they're able to create that idea with Daniel Bryan, yeah, he's small. Yeah, he's an underdog. But once you piss him off, once you push him to the edge, and once he gets to a point that it's either do or die, and he lets loose, I think, he's going to be a great star. And I can give you an example of this. I don't think you remember this match, but Money in the Bank 2000, and actually, yeah, it was recent, Money in the Bank 2013, in that very match, there was a point in the match where everybody was inside the ring, and then Daniel Bryan just lost his shit. He got angry. And then next thing you know, he's going all over the place. He's taking people down. He knocks Sheamus off the top rope to the table. He knocks somebody up the ladder. And he clears the entire ring. And that ring was top stars. I'm talking Randy Orton, CM Punk, John Cena, Sheamus, Christian, Rob Van Dam. And that's a big fucking deal. That's what I want to see more of Daniel Bryan. I think once they instill that and make it like, a big intricate part of his character, a lot more than what they're doing with it right now, I think instantly, Daniel Bryan's star power will grow even more and more. And it might actually surpass John Cena. And yes, I just said that. I think that Daniel Bryan has the potential to surpass John Cena, in my personal opinion.
Now, basically what you want them to do is you want them to give him a Ken Shamrock element to his character, which I don't disagree with at all. Because there does come to a point where every man has a breaking point, and to me, if anything, I would agree that would enable him to connect even more with the audience. But when we talk about Daniel Bryan, is this an example of where the simplicity, because if you remember way back in 2012, just as this was starting, I said that they needed to seize this, they had something here, and this was a very simple and easy way to get this guy over like $1 million. The question is, though, is that we could talk about him whether or not he's truly transcended and gone mainstream. Some elements he absolutely has, and some elements he probably has not yet. Is there going to be an instance here? I guess kind of the question I have is Daniel Bryan over with the live event audience, but it doesn't always necessarily translate to the people watching at home and the casual kind of viewer? Is he ever going to be able to maybe break through that glass ceiling and cross over like that? Or is he not going to be able to do that? And even if he gets close to that, is the WWE going to prevent him from doing that? Meaning, if he gets to that point where he could become the top guy, let's say in theory, even though he's not a part of the Breakfast Club, Dalyxman, you know better. If he does get to that point, are they going to knock him down and make sure that he's nothing more than the number 2?
Man, you know what? I can't read WWE's mind nowadays, but I guess based off of history, and this is to answer this question, I have to go off of history here. In terms of, again, because of who he is, because of his size, I fear eventually if Daniel Bryan doesn't draw in the numbers, doesn't, his live audience star power doesn't translate to viewership, they might indeed, stop him from breaking that glass ceiling. But I will say this, though. The yes chant, the yes movement, it may be, a tool for Daniel Bryan's character, but there's some legitimacy behind that. You've seen the videos. You see the yes chant not just happening on TV. You see them in schools. You see them in sports. You see them all over the place. You see them happening outside the business. The yes chant has become so popular that it has literally transcended the WWE. And I think the WWE, hopefully they see that. And if they do see that and they're smart enough to take advantage of that, I think they're going to use that popularity that Daniel Bryan has created. Now, some people might say that the Yes Chant is making Daniel Bryan and not the other way around. I can agree with that somewhat. And you know what? It's whatever. Daniel Bryan is still going to be the man, regardless of what perspective you look at it. You know, Daniel Bryan makes the Yes Chant. Yes Chant makes Daniel Bryan. Getting back to my point here, though, if the WWE is smart enough, they should, and I believe they will, hopefully, take advantage of that and, use that Yes Chant to promote not just Daniel Bryan, but themselves. They can easily turn that around and say, hey, this Yes Chant that's getting popular, that was us. We started that. It was one of our characters, and hopefully, Vince McMahon being the businessman that he is, we start to see this, translate into some good things for Daniel Bryan in the near future. And that's all I can really say about it. This is a really hard subject to, give you a definite answer on. It's just speculation at this point.
I know. It hits you right there in the loincloth region. Let's talk about something else that probably does potentially hit you very hard in the crotch region, and that is what has gone on with Daniel Bryan in 2014. Now, let me set the table for those of you listening, so that way you can kind of get where I'm going with this. A lot of people believed, foolishly in my opinion, that Daniel Bryan was going to both beat Bray Wyatt and then apparently enter the Royal Rumble and win the 2014 Royal Rumble. Apparently, they don't understand how the WWE works. It doesn't make it right. It just is how they work. It is. So he lost to Bray Wyatt, which wasn't a bad thing. It wasn't a bad thing at all, because Bray Wyatt had to go to such extremes to beat a Daniel Bryan. That's one of those great classic matches that helps both and hurts neither. Now, Elimination Chamber comes along, obviously, and I think some people, again, foolishly were expecting the WWE to put the title on Daniel Bryan. That wasn't going to happen. Now we get to WrestleMania season, and now this is where you get that interesting dynamic with CM Punk. Now, with CM Punk being out of the picture, Triple H needs a Mania payday. Ugh. He needs a big-time opponent for WrestleMania. His ego demands it, and by God, the WWE demands it. So in steps Daniel Bryan. Now, when we talk about this has been a storyline that's been going on since what? Leading into SummerSlam 2013? Are you content? Right. Are you content with Daniel Bryan facing Triple H at WrestleMania 30 and beating him?
Well,
if that's what was to happen, would you be content with that happening, and then maybe, let's say, at some point in time later on in the year, whether it be the next month, a couple of months later, would you be okay with Daniel Bryan winning the belt then? Does it make enough storyline sense for you to get over the fact that maybe you want him to win the belt at Mania? What's your thought on this?
Well, before I get into Triple H and Daniel Bryan and the whole WrestleMania 30 bit, I will, tell you about how I felt about the Royal Rumble. And yes, I will happily admit, I was one of those fans raging in my room, tossing my clothes around and destroying shit because Batista or Daniel Bryan wasn't in the Royal Rumble and Batista won it. I was pissed. I was mad. And yes, I will probably give you the, tell you that yes, maybe I was naive in a sense, because I'm thinking, again, tying into how popular Daniel Bryan is, I'm thinking the WWE must know that this guy is the most popular man in their company. I mean, holy crap, he was Superstar of the Year in 2013. I mean, you have to believe that they're going to do something with him special, right? So going into the Royal Rumble, Bray Wyatt versus Daniel Bryan, classic match, Bray Wyatt winning, I have no issues with that. It actually, in hindsight, was better for Bray Wyatt to win than for Daniel Bryan to win, because Daniel Bryan didn't get hurt at all, and Bray Wyatt, he's about to fight John Cena at WrestleMania. Different topic, but
it's funny. It's funny how they turned him away from the Wyatt family so quickly. At least I will give the WWE credit. They realized it was the wrong way for them to go at the time. There was no reason to go there, so they quickly ended it. There was anybody that lives in this fantasy world that this was some great epic storytelling. Let me tell you something, it wasn't. But Daniel Bryan versus Triple H can be an example of actually really good storytelling, because again, this guy has basically been the authorities, I don't know what you want to call it, bitch, since SummerSlam.
Yeah, he's been here a little bitch for a while now. I agree with that. And, sorry to interrupt you right there, but, I agree since SummerSlam. When you think about it, yeah, you're right.
So when it comes down to it, is the bigger story at this point for WrestleMania Daniel Bryan needing to one-up the Authority and beat Triple H, or is it he needs to win the title as the ultimate FU? Which one do you think is better ultimately? Which one do you think makes more storyline sense?
I have to say the bigger storyline here is his battle against the Authority. I think Daniel Bryan versus Triple H ultimately makes the most sense because, again, going back to SummerSlam, who was the guy that screwed him over? Triple H. Who was the guy that screwed him over at Night of Champions? Triple H. Who was the guy that messed him over again at Hell in a Cell? Triple H. Who's the guy that most likely sent the Wyatt family after him? Triple H. Who's the guy that didn't put him in the Royal Rumble? Triple H. Who's the guy that, I go back to Elimination Chamber. Who's the guy that sent Kane out there most likely? Triple H. The guy is a dark cloud over Daniel Bryan's life. And ultimately, the story is, as much as I want Daniel Bryan to be champion, I'll get to another point that in a second, but ultimately the story calls Daniel Bryan to fight Triple H. And again, I said this months ago, if Daniel Bryan was to not be in the World Championship picture, I would be perfectly fine with him fighting Triple H. And honestly, the more the storyline goes on, the more they tell the story of Triple H at first denying Daniel Bryan, you're not worthy of me. I'm an A-plus player. You're a B-plus player. It's asking a lot of questions. And the best storylines, the best stories ask you those questions to get you intrigued. How is Daniel Bryan going to get to fight Triple H at WrestleMania? That's the first question. Will he beat Triple H? That's like the ultimate question. Can he definitely beat Triple H? Not just because he's fucking Triple H, he's the game, or he's God, but, he's also the head boss. He has different powers. He has different things under his sleeve that he can use against Daniel Bryan. At this point in time, the WWE Championship is an obstacle, and, but the bigger obstacle here is, can he overcome not just a corporate figure of the company, but can he overcome the game? The cerebral assassin, a guy that gave people like Taker, Austin, The Rock, these awesome, great characters, Shawn Michaels, Mankind. He retired Mick Foley, for Christ's sake. This is the same guy that did all those kinds of things, one of the most dangerous entities in wrestling. Can Daniel Bryan truly overcome that obstacle? And, the more I talk about it, the more I get excited for it. I start to agree that, the best match to happen at WrestleMania has to definitely be Daniel Bryan versus Triple H. I'm just saying it right now.
Now, here's the thing, is I've started to see a lot of fans and some of the other, internet wrestling community talking heads, so to speak, talk about the fact that the whole WrestleMania mantra of Vince McMahon is to ultimately send the fans home happy, which is largely true, but there are a couple of notable exceptions. The ironic thing is one of the more serious fans' favorite WrestleManias, if not favorite WrestleManias of all time, is WrestleMania 17 at the Reliant Astrodome in Houston, Texas, where Stone Cold Steve Austin, for dumb dick reasons that are still not understood to this day, turned heel. You took the embodiment of the Attitude Era, the person that the fans loved, and you turned him heel. That sent nobody home happy. Everybody was pissed off with that. WrestleMania 16 the year before, Triple H walked in the champion, he remained the champion. Yeah, that's just a couple of examples over the past 29 WrestleManias, but it's kind of funny to me when people sit there and talk about, well, he just has to produce that great WrestleMania moment that sends the people home happy. So putting Daniel Bryan in that match, if Batista is designed to win this all along, which is what I believe, would the fans go home happy if Daniel Bryan got put in the match just for Batista to pin him? Or for a Randy Orton, let's say, to beat him? Or for Daniel Bryan to not be involved in the decision at all? Or for a Triple H or a Kane to interfere and cost him the match? Would that really send anybody home happy?
No, it wouldn't. I agree with you.
I mean, do you really want Daniel Bryan in that title match, knowing there's a strong possibility that he might not win that title? And no, this does to me not compare to Benoit in the build-up to WrestleMania 20, because Benoit won the Royal Rumble. Daniel Bryan wasn't even in the Royal Rumble. Benoit had, to me, years where he hadn't been the top guy in the WWE. You know, he had been a WCW World Champion, yes, but he had never reached that milestone in the WWE. Whether people like it or not, Daniel Bryan has been a multiple-time World Champion in the WWE. So it doesn't have that same element. It doesn't have that same story to it, and I'm sorry. But Randy Orton and Dave Bautista are not Triple H and Shawn Michaels. There are entirely different dynamics here 10 years later. Now, could you sit there and argue that if people believe that, well, you got to send the fans home happy, couldn't you sit there and get around that by having Batista be the champion and not having to have a clear-cut babyface in your world title match if you either main evented Taker and Lesnar or you main evented God versus Daniel Bryan? Wouldn't that be an opportunity to overcome not having a babyface in that title match and still send the fans home happy?
Absolutely. And if they do that, I think the audience will, accept that a lot more. Because at this point in time, if they do go through with Batista versus Randy Orton, that audience is going to shit on it. I don't care what they do, all right? It's almost to the point now that the WWE has literally booked themselves into the corner. They know, and I think, WWE will probably admit this too, Batista and Randy Orton is destined to be a match that the fans will crap and destroy. I don't see how any sort of reason or any sort of way they can change that up. Besides the fact that it's heel versus heel, it's two men that, first, the audience doesn't want to see, and the Breakfast Club, and two, it doesn't, again, it's taking away the factor that our guy is not in that match. So if our guy's not going to be in the match, then fuck your match. We're going to take a big crap on you for all I care. And in that sense, I do believe that the better option would be to put Daniel Bryan and Triple H in the main event. Now, I have a question for you, Schlegdaddy, because I asked this to some of my fans out there earlier. I asked them the question of, would you prefer to see Daniel Bryan wrestle Triple H or in the World Championship? Or, a third option, would you be okay with him wrestling in both matches, putting a double duty, fighting Triple H, and then probably having a stipulation where if you beat Triple H, then you get inserted into the main event match, and then possibly, again, be able to create a WrestleMania moment where, just send the fans home happy or, get disappointed and he loses. But in your opinion, would having both matches, would having Daniel Bryan in the main event and Triple H be the better option, or, how do you feel about that?
Well, let me put it to you this way. That's kind of similar to the treatment that Bret Hart got at WrestleMania 10. The big difference at that time was that they were going to roll with Bret the Hitman Hart as their top guy for the rest of 1994. I do not want to see Daniel Bryan work both matches just to where he beats Triple H, and then he gets in that title match and doesn't win. Or if he gets into that match with Triple H, he beats him, and then he goes on to somehow magically overcome these monster odds, and he sticks it to the Breakfast Club again, and he wins the title just to have him lose it the next night on Raw or at the next pay-per-view Extreme Rules. In order for them to do that, to me, it's one of those examples of where if you're going to do it, you have to and must go all the way, because that is the only way it will ultimately work. If you are going to have him wrestle Triple H maybe at the early portion of the night, which I'm not sure God would sign off on because he doesn't view himself anymore as a first or second match player, brother, then comes back and he gets into that main event, you give the crowd that babyface, you give the match that babyface that it probably does need, even though the WWE might not agree and might not see it that way, especially if they're going with this whole mantra of there's no more baby faces and heels. The bottom line is you could sit there and put Daniel Bryan in there and have him win and create this great WrestleMania moment, but if you're not going to go with him and you're not going to roll with him for the rest of the year and you're not going to make that statement that you stand behind Daniel Bryan and he is the top guy, he is the biggest star, then what the hell's the point? You're just dick teasing, and it's like you're running scared if you're the WWE. You're just going to give everybody this one night to shut everybody up, and then you're going to go right back to doing Breakfast Club business the WWE way because that's WWE business. I don't want to see that unless they're going to go all the way. If not, I would rather him just face Triple H at WrestleMania, have him beat Triple H at WrestleMania, and then maybe, you know what, at some point in time, continue to drag the storyline out, and maybe wait until you get closer to SummerSlam for him to win the title from, let's say, a Batista. The last question I have for you about this, though, I think is very important. We talk about Dalyxman in today's WWE. I know you see it, I see it, most fans see it. The faces are the villains, and the heels are the heroes, because the faces win too damn often, have too few obstacles, and the heels have all the obstacles, and they always lose, it seems like. So they become the heroes that the fans get emotionally invested in. With Daniel Bryan, he's actually been a different babyface, you would agree, that he's had challenges and obstacles to overcome. Is the WWE running a risk of, if they don't put the belt on him soon, that it's not going to matter at the end of the day, and fans will actually start to tune him out a little bit, and they will lose a little bit of what they had?
And see, this is a question that I've been contemplating myself, too, because I don't know if you've been watching my videos a lot. I had a friend called Joe who's a casual viewer on my channel. Those of you who know who he is, he said the exact same thing. He's wondering at this point in time, if they don't put the belt on Daniel Bryan, he's just going to not care when they actually do. But the other side of that coin is, let's say they do put the belt on Daniel Bryan, and they give him the John Cena treatment, where he just beats everybody, and then he becomes an obstacle that has to overcome. And, fans, end up turning on him, and then it's nasty and stuff like that. In terms of, to answer your question, eventually, I think the WWE has to have a destination for the storyline, besides this Triple H being them. The ultimate goal to cap off this storyline has to be, and I really stress this, it has to be with Daniel Bryan winning the championship, because if it's not, they really do risk the opportunity of drawing fans away. And I really do mean that. Maybe it won't be like a big portion of the audience where they can, they'll lose like a big portion, like they'll go down to, 1.0 ratings or something like that. They won't get that bad. But it gets to a point where you have this guy who fans are invested in. You have this lightning in a bottle that if you capitalize on it, it can do great things for you. But if you don't capitalize on it, you let it wither away, eventually you're gonna go back to the days of fans hating on the John Cena's, the fans hating on the baby faces, the Sheamuses, and loving the heels, because you continue to promote them as the obstacles, and you have an opportunity right now to change all of that, because you actually have a babyface character that fans love. You have a guy that fans are willing to get behind, who feels sympathetic when he's beat down, and then when he overcomes things, they get excited for it. I go back to when, even though it was 2 weeks, when he was with the Wyatt family and he went back to being a babyface, that reaction was amazing. When he took off the Wyatt family clothes and he did the whole yes chant, the yes taunt, and had the entire audience, like a freaking chorus, doing it with him. And it's like, and that was just a 2 week, oh my God, Daniel Bryan's leaving us. Oh, he's back. Yes. Now, I'm imagining that with this big storyline going for how many months? Since August last year, I'm going to say about 7, 8, 9 months. If it caps off with a big moment like him winning the WWE Championship, it's going to be a moment. Or him being Triple H, it's going to be a moment. And the WWE has to know that. And for them to, shit the bed and, not give Daniel Bryan that moment ultimately, I think it's going to be, in my personal opinion, bad for business. Now, how you feel about it is how you feel about it. I just think at this point, Daniel Bryan is the man, and they should capitalize on where he is right now, ultimately.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. And I wanted to, actually, somebody here has one last question for you. It's a special guest. Excuse me, Dalyxman.
Hi.
Mark is smart here, and what I want to know is, how can you sit there and in good faith and conscience sit there and prostitute yourself as the biggest fan of Daniel Bryan in the entire world when you are perfectly okay with him wrestling Triple H at WrestleMania 30? No, this is not acceptable. I am Daniel Bryan's biggest fan because I will not rest until he is put in the WWE World Heavyweight Championship match at WrestleMania 30. Have you created a White House petition? No, Mark is smart has. And do you know why? Because Daniel Bryan is the best wrestler in the world. And I'm tired of everybody referring to you as the biggest Daniel Bryan fan of all times. I'm the biggest Daniel Bryan fan. I'm Marcus Smart, and you are nothing more Then number 2, doo-doo. Good day, sir.
Well, Mark, I'll say it like this, Mark. If you want to get inside the ring and handle this, Mark, me and you can go one-on-one for the title. Who's the best number 1 fan? Daniel Bryan. Hey,
do you think the IWC would stream that? Would that be a match worth streaming?
I think you'd sell out, brother.
We'd sell out the illegal free streams, indeed. Well, I want to thank Dalyxman for joining us. We've got a lot more show to come. But thanks, my man, for coming on. It was a very good conversation. And make sure you let your followers know that we had this great discussion here on the OTRS Central podcast on Blog Talk Radio.
Yes, sir. This is your boy, Dalyxman, signing off. You guys have a good day. Peace out, man.